Hi everyone, welcome to our presentation today on building an authentic talent brand strategy at Postmates. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day and joining us on this topic. I'm Ariane, CEO of GoodTime. GoodTime is the hiring experience platform that automates and helps scale interview scheduling and interviewer training so your candidates have amazing interview experience meeting a diverse set of well-trained interviewers. LinkedIn listed the employer brand as one of 6 talent acquisition trends of 2021, along with internal mobility, virtual recruiting, DE&I, as well as remote work. This is not surprising at all because after COVID, employer brand is even more pronounced now. Now that the differentiation is even more difficult in absence of a push office, Michelin star chef, on-site gym, and so on. So now the TA leaders are facing the challenge of having to rethink and reimagine employer brand and really find true differentiation in this virtual world. And besides the competition for talent, which employer brand definitely helps, and also talent, competition for talent is still extremely fierce even after COVID. Really, the purpose of the talent brand is to attract the right talent that will thrive in your unique company culture and at the same time repel the wrong talent. So now the question is, I'm not a marketer. How do I do employer branding, right? How do I help our company successfully implement employer branding? So our agenda this morning is that we'll meet today's speaker, Pete Lawson, and he'll go through step by step how to create a talent brand strategy like the one his team created for Postmates. Now, he takes a phased approach to his strategy building, so we'll pause for a few minutes at the end of each phase. There are 3 phases to take some questions. So please, throughout the entire talk, please submit your questions, and we'll try to get to as many of those questions as we can at the end of each phase. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to today's speaker, Pete Lawson, VP of Growth and Client Services, Proactive Talent. Take it away, Pete.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Ariane. I'm going to just share my screen here. Give me one moment. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining. My name, as Ariane said, is Pete Lawson. I am currently doing some technology. Hopefully you all see that now. So I'm currently the VP of Growth and Client Services at Proactive Talent and former VP of TA at Postmates. Super psyched to be here. Love this topic, as you can imagine. Absolutely nerd out on it. And so I'm really excited to really walk you through the framework and how we got all of this done, the strategy that we built with Proactive Talent at Postmates for our employer brand. To give you a little context just on where both Proactive Talent and Postmates intersected on this work, I think it would be helpful just to lay out my process for the strategy and how I approached it. One of the #1 priorities I had when I first got to Postmates was to implement a talent brand strategy. We needed to do this rather quickly because we were there's a lot of moving parts internally. We're a hyper growth company, growing rapidly, had filed for our IPO, so there are a lot of moving parts internally and a lot of bandwidth that was shrinking from executive leadership perspective on all the competing priorities. So with that in mind and knowing like we had to get to work quickly and do it now while I was really reforming and building the team, I called up my buddy Will Staney, who's the founder and CEO at Proactive Talent, and said, we got a lot of work to do. Let's do this. So that's how we really intersected. Proactive Talent is everything recruitment end to end, from employer brand consulting to recruitment optimization to tech implementation to on-demand recruiting and diversity, equity, inclusion consulting. So end-to-end suite from a consulting perspective. So what I'm going to lay out to you today is really that strategy. We had a lot of hands on deck from both the Proactive Talent side, but also, like I said, as I was building the capabilities internally, my leader at the time on the recruitment ops side was Stefan Prendas. Him and his team did a great job with carrying through this framework and really implementing it and building it out. So That's what we're going to walk through here today together. So let's get into it. So as you all know, Postmates is, it's a bit of a household name when it comes to, getting anything that you want delivered now. It's really become a pop culture verb, Postmate it. So there's no surprise from a branding perspective that, we're a known consumer brand out there. We do have an established consumer brand. This does not necessarily mean that people understand what it's like to work there, though. And so that was really the gap we're trying to solve. So, the same person that is maybe ordering their burrito at 2 a.m. On their couch, might not be the same person that would want to work 60, 70 hours at a fast growing startup trying to solve some of the biggest problems we have in our trajectory. So it was really important that we distinguish those. At the same time, I would say there is a strong parallel that you want to really run within your consumer brand and a narrative that you can really weave. But you still want to have a distinguished, talent brand that is separate. So essentially what we were trying to, what we were dealing with. So when I first got to Postmates, we were working with, a basic employer brand. We had presence on most of the key sites. We had the LinkedIns and the Glassdoors and whatnot, and had material out there, but we didn't have anything that really captured the spirit of the employee culture. And we really relied heavily on that consumer brand. We also lacked an overall strategy on how we were measuring these metrics. So, we had about 500-600 people to hire for that year, needed to really have a lens on our diversity, equity, and inclusion, how we're attracting the right set of diverse candidates into Postmates. So we needed a framework for how we're going to measure that and how we're going to really understand where we're turning the dials up and down to get the talent we needed. So the approach was really 3 phases. As Arian said, this is, we're going to pause after each step to take some questions, but essentially this is everything I'm going to go through today. Is the 3 phases were discovery, development, and then our execution phase. And then within those phases, these are some of the main bullets that I thought would be interesting for the purpose of this meeting, but there's a lot more that really kind of goes into this. But at a high level, these are the main things that we're really tackling in each phase of the process. And the process is really from an end-to-end perspective through all these phases. Essentially, we're going to go into this in more detail, but it really started with researching, understanding what our employees are motivated by, what drives them to succeed. What are our competitors saying about us? What are they saying to their potential candidates and employees? That's a compelling, compelling narrative. What's pulling them in, and then how are we positioning? Where are we positioning authentically in the market? How are we crafting some of these compelling messages to help others really envision themselves working for Postmates? And then what's that omni-channel, that distribution approach? Like, where are we going to be putting these messages in the right places? As Arian said, we want to attract the right people and really dissuade the wrong people away from our brand and what we're trying to do as far as a talent acquisition strategy. And then how do we activate that? How do we convert that awareness into driving more applications, higher quality talent? And then with all of this done, we want to know how we're measuring it. So where are we turning those dials up and down? Where are the channels working? Where are they not? And if they're working, how do we crank them up? If they're not, how do we crank them down? So you need a framework for how you're going to be measuring this over time as well. And all of this is really backed into, is really laid on top of your existing strategy for what are the roles you're trying to hire for over the next 12 to 24 months. So that's really what we're going to dive a little bit more into here today. So let's jump into phase 1, which is discovery. So through this process, we really, we tackled these 3 main initiatives. Discovery interviews, we did a talent competitor analysis and audit, and then a digital brand technical audit. So through the discovery work, we conducted a series of interviews. So, wanted to meet with the employees, we met with executives, we met with, basically a whole suite of people around the organization to really understand, what's it like to be part of the Postmates family? What is it about their backgrounds, their roles, what got them there, what was compelling, what's working, what's not, how do they see our brand from, internally versus externally? Really wanted to see it through our employees' eyes. And then through these interviews, we're able to really identify, not only where they felt undervalued, where they felt like they're getting maybe less in terms of employee experience than others, but, what are the large promoters of the company? And, how do we take that and really iterate on that from an EVP framework point of view? From this work, we really developed a SWOT, our strengths, our weaknesses, the opportunities and threats to our employer brand. And that this was one of the frameworks for really how we, again, into phase 2, we'll talk about this, how we got some of that EVP framework built. I think a really interesting part of this too is there are a lot of insights that we got through this process that we worked within the people organization to say, hey, this is how our employees are feeling. This is some of the feedback. And then how do we continually improve as an organization because of that feedback, knowing that, people are centric to what we're doing and what we're trying to build here. So that was this step of the process. And then we did an analysis, of our competitors. We reviewed like 6 to 10 competitors. These were both, on the direct competitor, the DoorDashes, the Uber Eats of the world, but also who are the competitors when it comes to tech talent that maybe are outside of our vertical. Who are we competing against? And we really wanted to understand, how are they showing up in the market? What is their EVP? What's the voice and tone? What's their brand reach? What's their community engagement look like? What's their UX and their design look like? How does it feel to a candidate? And really tore that apart to then understand, based upon that, how can we differentiate as Postmates, as an organization? How can we differentiate to really give us that competitive edge? And then we did a digital audit. So in this work, we conducted just a full end-to-end audit of all of our digital platforms. So both channels and our platforms. So career site, the job description pages, our corporate blog, social media, Glassdoor, Stack Overflow, GitHub, all the things that you can imagine from a digital sense. We just, did a complete audit of all this work. And then, through this, we identified some of our gaps, some of our opportunities. Where do we need to build more infrastructure? Maybe where do we need to turn some things off that aren't, practical for what we're actually trying to accomplish from a talent attraction standpoint. And again, just did a full audit of all these things. So that is a majority of what we did in phase 1. And we're going to jump into phase 2. But before we do that, I know we're going to take some questions. So I'll just pause right there, and Arden, just let me know what kind of questions you have firing at you.
Yeah, that's a great question. That's a great time for a quick pause and answer any questions. Let's see. There are some really amazing questions. One of them that kind of pops out to me is, hey, did Proactive help you with the talent competitor analysis and interviews, or did you conduct this with your internal resources within the TA team?
Yeah, great question. So we, that Proactive Talent did a lot of that work. So Proactive Talent comes in, and I think this is also the benefit, you can do a lot of this in-house. I think the benefit of working with a Proactive Talent or a third party is that, through some of this work and some of this discovery interviews, there's really no politics involved with the third party. I think that's to the benefit that you get is, people are more comfortable telling you your baby's a little ugly in those meetings with a third party, and it's a little bit of a venting session. And so, bringing in a consultant like that really helps identify some of the things you might already know, or maybe weaknesses within your brand or your company, and really helps kind of bring those to the surface for you to deal with them as an organization. So not only not all the bad, but like the good too. So how all of that kind of came to be was through that interview process, both with our executive team and then other members of the organization. But we leverage Proactive Talent for that. And then also some internal team just for logistics standpoint of getting all that set up and doing it in a quick time frame.
That's amazing. And then another question is, what is a realistic time frame for the phase 1?
Yeah, great question. I think this depends on how fast you can go as a company internally. Like that's all up to the speed and agility that you can have for making sure that you're getting a thorough audit and interview cadence. So, chasing executives and calendars and stuff is what I'm kind of really alluding to is sometimes can be tough depending on the organization, but realistically, it's 4 to 6 weeks. Each phase of this is roughly within that time frame.
4 to 6 weeks. So all three phases in combination would be about 3 months.
Yeah.
3 months.
Yeah, for I think realistically it's a 4-month process end to end as you get into the activation phase.
Gotcha. And then another question, this actually was one of my questions that really popped into my head also while listening to you, was there any surprise or like an aha moment that you were able to get through the discovery phase when you were working at doing this work at Postmates? Some like unique insights from your employees that really helped you build this helped to build a unique employer brand.
Yeah, I think it was, I don't know. Maybe it wasn't, this isn't as exciting for everyone to hear, but I was really excited after doing a lot of this work and talking to people and really truly getting down to the root of like, why people were here and what compelled them, to join Postmates to begin with. And, some of the work they're doing and how, what it meant for them as humans, and how it relates to their kind of interpersonal story. I was really, I guess maybe surprised, but taken back by some of the stories that I heard from that process, of just how really embedded everyone was that we were talking to with like the mission and what we were trying to accomplish. And I think a lot of this too was through that beginning COVID time, right? Like we were, prior to COVID, it was really kind of a convenience brand. And then we moved to more of like a necessity brand as everybody was sheltering in place and whatnot. And I think, and everyone in the world has been affected by COVID and the pandemic. So everyone has their own unique story of how like what we were doing was really affecting their family and the people, and all the stories that kind of came out of that were super touching. And so everyone that we were meeting with in this phase and those stories that came out of it were just amazing. And that's what we wanted to do, is take that and act as a megaphone externally to kind of share some of the great stories we're hearing about people internally and why they're passionate about what they're doing. So that was cool. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. Well, we have a lot of really good questions. Unfortunately, we can't get to all of them because we have a lot of really amazing content in phase 2 and phase 3. So Pete, why don't you go ahead and tell us more about phase 2, and then we'll get to some more questions at the end of that.
Absolutely. Great. So phase 2, this is development phase. So this is where, all the work that we had done in phase 1 is really starting to come to life. So this is where we really start to begin the development of the brand narrative, using those insights that we got through assessment and discovery and recommendations in phase 1. This is where we really start to validate and finalize the recruitment marketing digital strategy and our EVP narrative. And the EVP narrative is, this is the iteration phase. So that EVP narrative is really going to be executed in phase 3 as we get into that. So how we defined some of the, how the methodology, I guess, for how we really tackled some of, the definition of what makes the experience of working at Postmates unique. We did this through a series of these design thinking workshops. So gathering employees across the organization from different departments, different levels all over the board, just to get a really good array of people's opinions and experiences. We took them, put them together, put them in these design thinking workshops. And then we delivered the recommendations on topics like the tagline, our voice and tone, the EVP framework. This is really how we really came to, this is one of the big pillars of like what got us to that EVP. Again, hearing from our employees and their experiences and, what makes us strong, what makes us maybe weak, or things that we need to work on internally. And that's what really brought us to the iterative process of coming up with this tagline. So this is what we ended up landing on. And I will say, I didn't mention this before, but there, beginning in this entire process, there has to be alignment with your marketing team. This is definitely not a go it alone type of deal. So we got buy-in from our marketing team early on that one, we know what we're doing. These are the things that we want to do, but here are the guardrails, and then here are the milestones that they need to absolutely be included on before we finalize any of the work. And one of those major things was obviously our tagline, wanting to make sure that that was going to really not be a complete, a distant, from a branding perspective than our consumer brand and so forth. So we went through probably 5 to 10 different iterations of tagline before we ended up landing on this. But this is where we landed, changing delivery for good. And, the reason why we thought this worked really well was it really creates the meaning that Postmates of the Postmates mission and brand. So you can see it uses the term delivery, which ties what the company is actually doing to a sense of purpose or need, not just like a petty want, like give me my burrito now. It gives us a more serious nature to what can be seen as, like I said earlier, that convenience play to more of like a necessity play. And so this is, you can see just by this slide, just some of the examples. This is where we start to, you'll see this in phase 3, we start to really activate this tagline and all of the different mediums that we're showing up in. And that is essentially the EVP. And then, just an example of some of the assets we created with this, changing delivery for good. You see it here with one of our fleet members. And so that gets us to phase 3, execution, where we get some shit done. I'm going to pause here. This is where we're going to pause for questions, and then we'll dive into all the stuff that came out of the work in phase 1 and phase 2.
Awesome. Yeah. People in the audience, please submit your questions now about what Pete just went through for phase 2. One of the questions that kind of pops out to me is, can you tell us more about change management with the in-house creative and brand team, and how do you get their buy-in, and what's the best practices when it comes to getting their buy-in on EVP as well as brand narrative?
Yeah, I think it's so yeah, like I said, you have to get it early on. One of the first meetings I had was with Eric Edge, our CMO, and helping him understand, here's the end goal that we're trying to get to. Here's the roadmap for how I want to really accomplish this mission. And getting buy-in from him early on, with this said and done, who on your team should I be meeting with on a regular basis? What are some of the things that concern you about some of this project work? What are the things maybe we should avoid? Or what are you comfortable with me really leaning in on? And like I said, what are those milestones we have to make sure we're checking with your team? And so when we partnered, when Proactive came in and a lot of the team came in with this strategy, we paired them up with a lot of our folks within the brand team to make sure, they had access to that branding toolkit. And they had access to all the assets and the material that we have from a branding standpoint on the consumer side. So as we're building this strategy, we're looking at all of that to really make sure that we're staying on brand. We're staying on, on whether it's font or like how we're showing up in the market, all those things. And so then when we come to this kind of phase, throughout this phase 2 really is where a lot of this happened, of us finalizing the EVP and some of like what the marketing collateral is going to look like and feel like and everything. At that stage is where I know we went through this phase 2 pretty quickly, but this was a decent chunk of time where we had to get true alignment from the marketing team. And I think that's just like any internal, partnerships, there's a trust there. And I think if we started showing them stuff that was like, wow, you're way off, you have no idea what you're doing, most of this work would have taken probably 9 months to get done. But I think because we had such great people with a really good brand eye, creating this stuff from the start, there wasn't a ton of iteration that we had to do because we were building that trust with the team, saying like, yeah, actually that looks great. So I think it's all about communication and just getting alignment from the start.
Definitely. And I think I'm seeing quite a lot of questions coming up regarding tagline. So one of the questions that I would like to ask you is, when settling on a tagline, usually taglines are used for marketing purpose, and now we're talking about employer branding purpose. Is it more important to communicate the product vision So basically consumer-facing product vision towards talent, or should we need to think about tagline in the perspective of how do we, how do we put this out towards potential team members and future employees?
Yeah, good question. I think taglining is super important just from like, we all have access to TV probably, but so like if you think about commercials and like where those taglines come in, and like even my kids, unfortunately, they don't really watch much TV, but they somehow know like the Folger song. So like it's some of that subconscious is definitely there. So I think it's really important to have that repeatable tagline showing up on all your mediums for people to, if it's obviously a positive one that helps that prospective candidate understand, or be curious. Really, they might not understand in a tagline what it's like to work there. It doesn't like sum it up in like 4 words, but it makes them curious enough to know like, what do you mean changing delivery for good? You're just giving us burritos, right? Like what is the good part? Like I want to understand more about that. And so I think it's important to differentiate from the consumer tagline for sure, because that's a completely different audience than maybe someone that's looking for their next opportunity to work for a company that has great values culture, is a diverse organization where their voice can be heard and feel like that there's a mission that is involved with like what they might be building. So I think it's really important there to differentiate. And that's why we want to get to this tagline.
Definitely. I'm guessing though, between the consumer facing tagline and employer branding tagline, there's some kind of continuation, right? In terms of tone, brand and so on, right? Yeah,
totally. Yeah. I mean, if you just say Postmate it, that doesn't tell you as an employee, like, well, I guess I'm just going to be building stuff that Postmates stuff to people, but it doesn't tell you like, what does it mean for you? What is it really, what's your involvement in that mission? And how is it going to make a true difference on your career trajectory? So, the idea is to kind of pull people in with a tagline to then discover more. And well, as we get into phase 3, you'll see some of that material of like where we wanted people to come in and get absorbed in some of the, what it's like to work here experiences. But yeah, it was really more of like any tagline, it's an attraction, a magnet essentially.
Definitely. And one last question before we move on.
Sure.
I think this is a really interesting question, especially if you are working at more of a early growth phase startups or companies. The question is developing a talent brand strategy too early for a startup that's less than 200 employees? If yes, what stage would be appropriate to dial in on this strategy?
So never too early, in my opinion. I think because a lot of this work is, the underlying, like I guess the undertone of all of this was like, what were we trying to accomplish with all of this? Not just like cool assets that look great out there for people to be like, what a cool company to work for. We really were trying to tackle getting a lot more diverse candidates into both, our engineering and product teams, but really across the organization. And so a lot of the strategy that you'll see in phase 3 was to really attract a lot more, specifically female engineers and female leaders within the organization. And to me, it's obviously never too early to really think about how you're pulling in talent in a diversified way, even if you're 5 employees. So I think like if you're a 200-person company, you maybe don't need something like this robust because you're not, trying to hire 500-600 people on an annual basis. But there is definitely a couple steps down that you could do for this approach, but very similar methodology. It would just require a lot less lifting, to be honest with you. But I wouldn't say like just jump into phase 2 and go. It's maybe like phase 1 is going to maybe take you 2 weeks, and phase 2 will take you maybe a little bit longer because you're strapped with internal resources. And then it's the phase 3 as we get into that. There's just a lot less, it's an omni-channel approach and how we're going out there from a content marketing standpoint. But so maybe there's just a lot less channels you're utilizing because you're not trying to have as big of a megaphone. So I'd say same approach, but just maybe dialed down.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And I can't wait to hear more about the execution phase. Please take it away, Pete.
Awesome. Yeah. So So phase three is this is where stuff gets real fun, because it's like all this hard work starts to come to fruition, and we get to actually play with it and roll it out. So phase three is execution phase. This is really where our EVP is activated. Our recruitment marketing toolkit is built out. Content creation calendar is built out. Our analytics dashboard is built out. Job posting guide is created, and then candidate experience, SLAs and technologies implemented and whatnot. And just kind of going back to that earlier question, if you're a 200-person company and you're looking at this and you're like, yeah, I don't think we need all this. There's a much smaller bite you can take out of this, but I still think all these buckets really truly count if you're a scaling organization. It's just, you're going to scale these with the organization. So let's get into what that looked like. So this is, really the approach that we took on our external branded microsites like Built-in, the Muse. They were super intentional and inclusive. And we really wanted to showcase the testimonials and photos that we featured, about, like I said earlier, female engineers and employees. As you can see them circled here, these are real employees. We wanted to really spotlight our female engineers, excuse me, and increase those female applicants. And we didn't just want, like, no offense to recruiters, I'm one, but we just didn't want people hearing it from recruiters. We wanted people to show up in these microsites, our career site, and rather than just saying like we're hiring female engineers, we wanted to empower our Postmates female engineers with these platforms to share their stories, to vouch for their work, so that those prospective engineers could actually look them up firsthand and say, wow, that's like Bianca. I can see her on LinkedIn. She's a real person. That's awesome. And actually have like those meaningful touch points to envision themselves working there. So that's the authenticity we really wanted to bring to this approach. And it also is a great opportunity for people like Bianca and others to showcase some of the awesome stuff that they're doing and like what they're working on for their own personal brand. So it was really a win-win from that perspective. It really gave everybody an opportunity to, within the organization, to really become brand ambassadors as well. And then we tackled the job posting. So I think, probably a lot of us on this call have experienced having inconsistent job posts within the organization where, maybe they're driven by hiring managers doing them, and then sometimes recruiting helps and this and that. We wanted to just completely get aligned on how we're showing up from a brand perspective on our job posts. And so what we did is we created this guide, created the job posting guide to essentially make this more candidate centric, on brands. Obviously, we wanted all the, as you can imagine, tagline, all of that was inclusive of this, but we wanted to outline the key sections and examples, create these templates, create these resources. So essentially hiring managers just plug into them and write better job descriptions. And the ultimate goal here was to get the job descriptions away from being person descriptions and more so descriptions of the job, the impact, how the candidate's going to actually be impacted in the role, and what difference they're going to make. So again, super candidate centric. And then the fun stuff is video content. So we did some video content. The interesting part of this, like I said at the beginning, is this strategy really started kind of pre-pandemic, and then as we got into phase 2 and 3, enter the room COVID, which was obviously a huge differentiator on how we're all working, but really how we're going to go about telling our brand narrative and our story, and how we're going to shoot video. Obviously, we couldn't shoot in the office, couldn't get overly creative with that approach, but I thought what was really interesting too is a lot of the narratives that we heard while we're interviewing our engineers at Postmates, was really largely, and I touched on this earlier, but it was around the impact they're making during COVID. So we wanted to be super intentional on how we highlight our engineers, but specifically what it's like during COVID, because we were doing some amazing things, I think, as an organization in the times of COVID. In the very, very beginning, one of the first to work at home, the first to really give our employees stipends and all these other things that were really helping our people out, both our internal employees and our fleet members. And we wanted to articulate that out. We wanted people to understand it. So as a way to create some of this content, we highlighted it in videos and all, as you can imagine, through Zoom. Specifically, we're going to watch one here in a minute, but specifically this was catered towards engineering and engineering talent. And we wanted to really foster that employee-centric and empower our female talent to talk more about the real impact they're actually making through building this technology. So I'm going to show one right now, and we're all going to have a quick view, bear with me, of just kind of a sample of one of the, oops, here we go, I'm going to play.
Because of COVID, we are a lifestyle convenience brand, which has now become an essential brand. Families and friends are depending on us, right, to provide food for their kids in a safe way.
I think it's really cool just the place that Postmates has with enabling still like that food economy to continue to exist with people staying at home.
It's more than just delivery now. Now you're making a difference in someone's day just by picking up your phone and using your app.
There are people that cannot step out of the house right now. Postmates is actually changing delivery in a very positive way for our customers.
We've been really lucky as a company to be in this position where we are experiencing tremendous growth.
It's actually doing all the things we do to operate this business in a healthy way. Not only are we all busy, we're busy doing good things.
Right now at Postmates, we're solving some of the challenges and problems that people right across the country are facing. But I think what makes it most special is that we're doing it with people that we really care about. No matter how difficult the challenge, people seem to rise to the occasion.
Week after week, we continue to become better versions of ourselves. And I think that in turn helps us be better for the community.
We're changing and shaping what the future of work looks like for Americans in this country. And that's probably what I'm the most proud of. I literally can't imagine being anywhere else.
Getting to see the value proposition of joining our fleet shift from like making some sweet money on the side in your free time to actually helping a lot of people stay afloat financially. It's kind of a huge responsibility as an engineer, but it's also like a huge point of pride as a person.
So one of the reasons why I left consulting was because I wanted to make an impact in the world and impact the lives of people on a day-to-day basis. And that hypothesis has definitely come true at Postmates.
It's with great pride that I say I work at Postmates right now.
Okay. Oops, a daisy. I am having some mouse issues. Bear with me.
Because of COVID, we are a lifestyle convenience brand, which has...
Absolutely love it.
Thank you. I apologize for that technical difficulty. This was a good time for my mouse to have no charge, but hopefully I'm back. You see my screen still. Cool. Okay, so yeah, so you could see in that video, obviously we wanted to really pull out what people are going through in the pandemic, and why this impact was really important. What the employee impact looked like on what we were building and how it really touched the people that were working there. So hopefully you kind of got a good sense of the tone that we're really going for in the time of COVID. Here is just an example of a recruitment ad. These are a bunch of ads that we did with our employees, or all employees of Postmates. So here we wanted to really encompass, this is where we did some geofencing and really targeted personas that we're trying to pull into the organization. But this is just a quick sampling of some of the ads that we did. And then our career site, we did a complete overhaul of the career site. Big plug for Eightfold here. This is where we really started to get into giving a better experience for people as they land into the job description. And so this is where we could really customize a lot of the material that we created. And leveraging Eightfold, we were able to really post direct content within the job description for employees or for candidates to really understand what is it like to work there, how can they envision themselves working there, et cetera. So instead of having people kind of click around and search for that information, we're able to really see it through one central place. And then also on here too, you can see that, you know, it also gives people an understanding of who are the other people that have maybe been hired for this role. You know, giving more confidence to the candidate to know, like, I think I'm a fit for this. I think I will apply. And it really increased, you know, our applicants over time. And I'm going to kind of spin through this quickly, knowing we're getting tight on time. But and then just a quick example of where you see some of the, you know, the tagline showing up in our career site, in the email footers, and et cetera. This is where we really want it to be constant and consistent with our brand messaging. Our employee blogs, this is where we really started to highlight, you know, our employees, but also give the candidates a good sense of, you know, what it's like to work here. How do you create some amazing experiences, you know, for your candidates through the process, but also like how to win some of these interviews. You know, what's an insider look from a recruiter. And then we had, then we get to candidate experience. So this was huge. You know, candidate experience, as you all know, is huge, and it is essential for, you know, having amazing human interaction with the candidates you're trying to pull in. So a big part of this, as you can see, is Good Time. I'm a super fan. I've used Good Time in so many other situations prior to Postmates. I've always loved it. And some of the things that I really loved was we're able to host our a lot of our, you know, the material that we did through phase 2 and phase 3, and a lot of the content onto the site. And so at each touch point that the candidates are having through their interviewer experience and scheduling, you know, they're getting a sense of the brand and the messaging. Another thing too is it gave about 50% time back to our recruiting coordinators to then now spend their time on things like creating content, creating blog posts, content calendar management, all the things. So this is something that was super important for us to, you know, from a tools perspective. And then, you know, the other part of Good Time was, you know, we wanted that same brand feel to be that people have on the consumer side to really come out on their interactions with us as an employer. So as you can see on the mobile app here, we're able to really showcase that similar experience of ordering your burrito. And, you know, if it's that easy in 2 clicks, it should be that easy to set a time to schedule an interview. So creating that same experience. So now, Arian, I just want to do a quick time check. I think we have a couple minutes left, right?
Yeah, we have a couple minutes left. I can ask one question from the audience, and then we can get to the result. And
Okay.
Pete, by the way, there's something that's blocking your screen in the middle.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
It is the survey. Is that better?
That's much better.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, so one question before we move on to the results is when it comes to, we actually have seen a lot of videos and ads and job posts and also career site and so on. I think it's really amazing that there's a really good consistency of brand across all those. And I think what really stood out to me was that representation, the diverse representation of Postmates employees. So the question is, when it comes to diverse representation, how do you carefully balance representation of showing actual engineers without tokenizing people with marginalized identities?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, that is where we want to have that. That's where you don't skip to phase 3 is, I guess, my recommendation of just like finding underrepresented minority you know, groups or people within your organization and saying, hey, you want to help us with recruiting ads? You get them on the journey early on. You engage with your employees and say, we want more diverse employees here. We want to diversify our employee population, and we need your help. Who would like to help with that? Raise your hands, kind of thing. I'm not like that, but that's where we really bring our employees on the ride. And you saw, like Bianca, for example, in that built-in feature. You know, we engaged with her in knowing, and we gave her an out. We said, listen, this is what we're trying to accomplish. We don't want to make you feel tokenized in any way, but we need more female engineers. And so we would love for people to understand your experience as a female engineer and what it's like to work here, but we also don't want to make you feel uncomfortable. So just having that conversation and putting it on the table, and there is no pressure involved for someone like herself to do that. And so allowing the input as opposed to like forcing people and just pulling them in regardless of their opinion. Obviously, that's huge. So it just comes down to communication.
Awesome. And I'm pretty sure everyone wants to hear the result. right? I've seen
Yes.
a lot of questions about how do we justify this, right? So yeah, please take it away.
Well, yeah, so justify it with getting results like this. We had some awesome results. I think this is just our overall applications. And so we had an 80% increase in overall applications year over year. Within those 80%, we had a 52% increase just quarter over quarter. So this really was like phase 3 was launching and activated essentially by Q3. So these are true results from the work that we did. Had a 52% increase there quarter over quarter, and then a 91% increase year over year in our female applicants, which, as you all know by now, that was like a central part of a lot of the work that we were doing. And then just taking two underrepresented minority groups within that same lens and distilling them out. So both within our Hispanic or Latino and Black or African American groups, we had a 30% increase in overall applications year over year. And then you can see here as we separate them out, 12% increase quarter over quarter on our Black or African American applications, and then a 33% increase in Hispanic or Latino quarter over quarter. So that was a great win for us. And again, it was an iterative process. Like this was just the beginning of some of that momentum. And then our quality. So like you might be saying, that's wonderful. You got a bunch more applicants, but like, were they actually good quality for the roles you're hiring? The answer is yes. And this is also where, Eightfold came in for us to really calibrate and understand and dial in, within their platform, we could really hone in on our actual quality of applicant as it comes to, matching them with the job. And so we had a 50% of our applicant pool met or exceeded job requirements, and then 46% strongly matched. So those were like those 8 9s out of 10 from a job description standpoint. So we knew that the volume was increasing, but also the quality of applicant was also going up with it. And then our engagement. So like this is all just within LinkedIn. So this is something I'm really proud of. We had, number 5 highest engagement Q3 out of the top 50 LinkedIn tech companies. So this is all LinkedIn measures, all these things. So Uber, who ended up, acquiring us, we were outranking them. And so our overall engagement was higher than some of our nearest competitors, was something I was super proud of as well. And then finally, our awards. So had a great partnership that we had built with Built-In. And as you saw, there's a lot of content we were posting there. So we were really out within those channels in that market. And the result of that was being ranked the best place to work in the Bay Area in 2021 by Built-In. And then the other awards underneath that, best benefits in Seattle, New York, Bay Area, and best paying company in the Bay Area. So the actual work that we did and everything we put into this actually resulted in some really, really good outputs. So I'm kind of sped through that ending, knowing we're at time, but really appreciate everyone's time and happy to talk shop a lot more about this later. If anybody wants to, feel free to find me on LinkedIn or share my contact info after this. I'm happy to chat through any of the stuff that we found later. Ariane, I'll hand it back to you.
Yeah, definitely. Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much, Pete. That was just absolutely jam-packed with really amazing content. I think that's all we have time for today. I want to thank you, Pete, for joining us today and for sharing such amazing, valuable information and this has been super helpful and interesting. If you want to connect with Pete Lawson or myself, let me put the contact information up on the screen one more time. Feel free to reach out to Pete or myself on LinkedIn or our email. Please join us again, and thank you so much for joining us today. And it's been a great session, and take care and see you next time.